Brandon Aiyuk is the man of the hour here when it comes to Pittsburgh and the Steelers trade considerations and whether or not they're going to land another wide receiver. And heading into the weekend, on Friday, we're talking about T. Higgins and next offseason, and at this point, the trade talks might be dead. Then it starts. Brandon Aiyuk, all sorts of social media nonsense flying all over the place. The rumors are swirling. Ben Albright out in Denver sends out a month-old text message thread of him talking about the Steelers trying to get Brandon Aiyuk and just tosses the little eye emoji out there. And what the hell is going on? Everybody, when I tell you that my phone, we were driving back. We were at Jillian's parents' house. We were just picking up some stuff to take to the wedding venue. We're coming back. Jillian's on my phone because I told her, I said, hey, look, something might pop off. I just need you to pay attention for me. She told it, and every 2 seconds, she's like, dude, you have 40 people texting you right now. Like, what do you do? I was like, nothing, dude. Everybody's just asking the same question. Is Brandon Aiyuk coming to the Pittsburgh Steelers? I've been told a couple things. I want to dive into that. But first, I want your opinion, how your reactions were as the tweets were going out, the rumors were circulating, and then obviously we'll dive into, I texted you, I let you know what was going on. But before all that, what were your thoughts?
Yeah, I was pretty stunned. I mean, I'm at Pittsburgh game. I'm writing about, quarterbacks and wide receivers, and I'm having a grand old time. And then I see this, and I am completely stunned. I mean, because it was not 2 weeks ago, I think, that we were talking about, John Lynch, 49ers GM, just completely shutting it down. Any rumor of the Steelers trading for Brandon Aiyuk, the idea of the 49ers wanting to deal Aiyuk, this was dead in the water. And then, we went through the same kind of process with T. Higgins, and there was smoke but no fire. And the fire has reappeared. It all has picked back up. I was for certain that this was dead, that we weren't going to be talking about this at all really anymore the rest of the offseason, and I was completely wrong. This just came completely out of nowhere, and I'm a little stunned that it's back on the table.
No, I agree. I thought it was at this point, at some point something's going to happen, but I thought we moved on from Aiyuk. I thought we moved on from the massive wide receiver contracts and the Pittsburgh Steelers going to land somebody that they probably couldn't afford, and where's the cap space coming from, so on and so forth. And then, boom, it comes right back like it never went anywhere. This is what I've been told. I obviously reached out. I said I have some sources inside the building. I made some phone calls as it's all going down. What sources have told me, team sources have told me, is that the Pittsburgh Steelers, there is nothing imminent right now. This is not a done deal. There is still plenty of work to be done. But talks are real. The rumors that are flying around of the Pittsburgh Steelers trying to make something happen with the 49ers, all of that is not just smoke. There is a little bit of fire. Now, they described it as a 50-50 shot. There's still some work. They have to figure out the financial side of it. San Francisco's probably going to have to take on more of Aiyuk's current contract than the Steelers are going to have to. Obviously, there's the future of Aiyuk and the contracts there, and the Steelers have to make sure that their side of the financials is all good. But he also said, word for word, he wouldn't be surprised if it did happen, or he would be surprised if it didn't happen, which immediately my eyes got ginormous and thought the Steelers are probably going to get Brandon Aiyuk. You hear all that? I told you last night, obviously, we went back and forth a little bit. What were your thoughts?
Yeah, so I think my initial thought was what happened. What happened in between, owners' meetings back at the beginning of April, and now that would have changed, what John Lynch said and changed his attitude towards a Brandon Aiyuk trade. And, this is a guy who's going into the final year of a pretty lucrative contract. This is going to be the most lucrative, as far as salary year of this contract. And he's going to be a free agent next year, kind of getting into his prime. I mean, this might be the last chance that Brandon Aiyuk has to land a truly massive NFL contract. And the way that wide receiver contracts go this year, or these days, it could be a hefty chunk of change. So I think the pressure is on Brandon Aiyuk. It seems like the pressure is on the 49ers a little bit to keep this expensive but really, really good core that they have in place. And Brandon Aiyuk, it's just when there's a desperation like that, I think, or when the time is kind of not on his side in a certain sense, I think there is a little bit of a desperation, and so I just you have to imagine that the relationship is getting a little bit soured there because neither side really wants to commit to anything less than their ideal scenario, and that I don't know. When you hear about that, it feels like it's hard to kind of put the toothpaste back in the tube,
Yep.
so to speak, when there's a situation like that, and I just can't imagine. This just seems like a Stephon Diggs scenario. Like this
Yep.
is almost like the exact same thing. It's just a team doesn't want to pay him. A player wants to be paid what he's worth, and that drives down trade asking price. Like this is only like when they say 50-50 shot right now, I feel like each passing day that this doesn't happen, it's going to get even more likely that it does happen, that he does get dealt, maybe not necessarily to the Steelers, but the Steelers are certainly going to be one of, if not the most aggressive team going after a guy like Brandon Aiyuk. So they have to be as big a contenders as anyone who would theoretically be on the trade market for a guy like Aiyuk.
I agree. I think every day that passes that there is no contract, we are getting closer to a Steelers trade. And I feel like, just like you said, the toothpaste can't go back in the tube. The Stephon Diggs trade, it feels like that has passed. There's the trade request stuff that went out and the false reports that were clarified, or at least somewhat false. We're not going to label them as truly false, but the reports came out about the trade request and how Brandon Aiyuk made a trade request to the 49ers, and then Ayuk's agents tweeting out saying that's not true. I don't think maybe a formal trade request was made, but at this point, everything that he's posting on social media, everything that he's saying on podcasts, it's very clear that this guy, he wants to get a deal done. And if that deal's in San Francisco, awesome. But if not, he'd like to be on the move. And the Steelers are possibly an option, I guess. How comfortable are you trading? Let's just say the value's okay. If I had to guess, I don't think the Steelers are giving up a first-round pick for Brandon Aiyuk at this point. I think that it's probably a second-round pick, a Stephon Diggs trade, where you're giving up a second, maybe a later-round pick in this year or next year's draft. Is that okay? Are you okay with that, knowing that the chances are San Francisco's taking on a good chunk of that contract in 2024? The Steelers probably got to pay this guy $30 million plus a year starting next year.
Yeah, I mean, I am quite honestly. Look, like we talked about this a while ago, but like,
Yeah.
I think this is the type of kind of home run ish swing that you need to take if you're in the Steelers position. I mean, I a trade for Ayuk would be Art Rooney, it would be Omar Khan kind of putting their money where their mouth is in terms of their comments about the sense of urgency regarding, not having won a playoff game in so long. Like,
Yep.
It's easy to talk that talk, but at some point you got to walk that walk. And while the Steelers have made some really solid moves this offseason, and they've made some splashes like adding Patrick Queen, going to get a Russell Wilson, they haven't really doled out big money. They haven't really committed themselves beyond Minka
Yep.
and TJ and obviously Highsmith last year and Cam Hayward too. But like those were kind of in-house things. Being aggressive in a way that you're adding a superstar-ish name. If you consider Brandon Aiyuk a superstar, I feel like I would. He's probably he's a top 10, top 5 receiver in the league.
Yeah.
That's the kind of aggressive move that I think would really tell me, this is more than just talking the talk. They are truly all in on their kind of stated goal of making sure that this year is not like any of the years before. That this is different. This is back to kind of setting a championship standard for the Steelers, and I think that's what they would do. So I think I would be comfortable for it because I think this is the right time for that. I think this is the right time to really be aggressive to open this window all the way, this championship window, and give it your best shot. I mean, they've made all the other moves. They've made kind of the auxiliary moves that you got to do to like build a great team around certain parts, and let's try to put the Steelers over the top and get them, a stud wide receiver to pair with George Pickens and just really go all in on this year.
Yeah, look, I agree. I think that there are so many possibilities with Aiyuk. If you're only giving up a second-round pick, just if you're the Pittsburgh Steelers, second-round pick right now is nothing. Like, to get a wide receiver, a position that you'd probably draft in the second round anyways, who cares? Wide receiver contract, $30 million a year, boatload of money. I get it. In 2 years, if you want to pull a Stephon Diggs trade and say, hey, pal, there you go. Like, we'll ship him somewhere else because we can't afford him. I think that works out just fine. Like, I don't think the Steelers are, they could sign him to a 3-year deal, and in 2 years, when they got to re-sign guys like Minka Fitzpatrick and I don't know, maybe quarterback or whoever, they just be like, all right, sounds good. We're just going to trade Brandon Aiyuk and we're going to go get a second round pick because that's what the wide receiver market's worth in the NFL. And $30 million at that time will be worth nothing for wide receivers. At that point, guys will be making quarterback money. Like, look, I think that there are so many possibilities with this that you are not tying yourself in the way that I think people expect them to, where the Steelers are, you're going to pay $30 million for a guy and then you're going to be screwed and you can't get I get all that. And I think that some names that doesn't make sense for. I think a T. Higgins in 2025, that doesn't make sense for, because that's a whole other year down the road. You have now set yourself up with the guy for the next, well, it was 4 years, right? 4 years, no, 3 years, $100 million. It was something crazy like that.
Yeah.
You've set yourself up now to where you're giving a boatload of signing money away and you're a year later and so on and so. You now have Brandon Aiyuk this season. You can extend him. His contract won't hit until next season. I get it, but you now have a year to work where you are looking at this and saying, how do we figure it out next offseason? I don't know how that happens. I'm not Omar Khan, but I could tell you that chances are he could figure it out in a year to make it work. I think a move now makes more sense than a move a year from now. And Brandon Aiyuk, to me, Brandon Aiyuk is totally like worth it. He's worth a first round pick, let alone a second round pick.
Yeah, and if it's a second round pick, honestly, who cares? Who cares if you re-sign him beyond that? That's the thing.
Exactly.
I will 1000% trade a second round pick for 1 year Brandon Aiyuk. I think that's a pretty obvious move too. You don't even have to re-sign him beyond 2024 if you don't want to.
Nope.
That's my point about going all in on this year. You've made every other move that signals this is our year. We are opening the championship window right now.
You're not trying to win it.
Right. You're not quite I don't think you're quite there with, who are the, Baltimore or, Kansas City or someone in terms of, as far as actual, championship potential, winning the Super Bowl potential.
Yeah.
This move puts you in that upper echelon. I think it does. I truly, truly think it does. I said that before when we were talking about him, about Brandon Aiyuk the first time around. And I still believe that this is a kind of game-changing move. This is kind of a not league-altering move, but at least, AFC-altering move. It probably definitely puts you ahead of Cleveland, I would say, in terms of general projections.
Yes.
I think Cincinnati's a little more complicated, but you're right up there with Cincinnati and the Ravens in terms of total talent, especially on the offensive side of the ball. It's to me, that would be a no-brainer. You pick in the first round looking for guys who will be as productive as Brandon Aiyuk is over the course of his career.
You pick in the top 10 looking for guys who are going to be as productive as Brandon Aiyuk.
Yeah. Right. And so in the second round, are you kidding me? You hope one of your draft picks can become Brandon Aiyuk, and Brandon Aiyuk is Brandon Aiyuk right now, man. So I don't think you have to overthink this at all. And I think looking too far down the road will just put your head into a knot that you don't, if you're the Steelers, that you don't really need to do right now. Just pay a good player, especially second round pick, 49ers taking on some of that money. Worry about 2025 in 2025, quite honestly. This isn't as big a deal to me as it is to get a playmaker in the building right now who could probably maybe put you over the top.
Yep. Look at you're dead on. You are dead on. And I every time I get something big information wise, the first person I always hear about it is my father. Every single time I shoot him a text, hey, look at this is what I just heard. And I texted him and he immediately texted me back and he said contenders. And I said, yeah, that's what and he's not a Steelers fan. That's what it makes them is you get Brandon Aiyuk, you're spot on. You are now right now the Steelers are Super Bowl contenders. You get Brandon Aiyuk, you're there. You're going to have people on ESPN who are putting you up there and saying, my guess is the Steelers win the Super Bowl. There's going to be a serious change in your Vegas book to going and winning a Super. Like, you've just set yourself up with so many options. You have 2 quarterbacks, a running game, a good offensive line. You still have all the draft picks in the world, including 2 third ones, that if you want to move up and go get a center or something in the second round, you could probably make that happen. They're just that the options are endless. The Steelers have so much potential. They've done so well. Like, this is another move that if it does happen, and you got to guess that it's going to happen for the right price, you just got to give Omar Khan even more credit, because this dude just comes away with ridiculous moves. That sets everybody up, not even just now, but long term. And where the Steelers are today is crazy. Brandon Aiyuk makes them like real serious. You're dead on. Like, could pull it off Super Bowl. Right now it's hopeful. Super Bowl hopefuls. Brandon Aiyuk, you're like, this could happen. Steelers, there's no missing links. You know, you could start Dan Moore and Nate Herbig, and you'd still be like, I feel pretty good about this team.
Yeah, well, F it, Brandon Aiyuk is down there somewhere, like, or
That's
George
what I'm
Pickens,
saying. Or George Pickens is down there somewhere. Just throw the ball up. Somebody's coming down with it. Like, yeah,
right.
It'd be so. And then jet sweeps for days with Calvin Austin. You still got Najee Harris and Jalen Warren. Hopefully Pat Freiermuth turns into something. And we haven't even entered the draft. We don't even know who they've come up with in the draft, but chances are they're going to add somebody. Could you imagine if the Steelers walked into the season with George Pickens, Brandon Aiyuk, and Malachi Corley? Like, or Lad McConkey, or Roman Wilson? Like, what are we doing here? You just took it from possibly the worst wide receiver core in the NFL to potentially the best. It's just, you make it happen. That's what we're hearing. It sounds like it's a move that, again, sources say they'd be surprised if it didn't happen. So keep your eyes peeled. I'm sure the news cycle, as for when, I have no idea, and they didn't have any idea either. But keep your eyes peeled, because it's going to happen, and we've always joked it's going to happen late.
3 a.m. on a Wednesday. You know, everyone's going to be asleep except for literally Adam Schefter and Ian Rappaport, and that's how you find out.
There will be 4 people who will be on the phone, or 4 people who will be on Twitter at that time, and it will be Ian Rappaport, Adam Schefter, John Lynch, and Omar Khan. They'll be the only. Mike Tomlin will wake up to the text like the rest of us. Hey, got Brandon Aiyuk. So could imagine that's going to happen.